Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense cruiser Liberty's Edge, watching the stars through the main view screen. It was a peaceful Tuesday morning in 2387, and Jake was thinking about his wife back on Earth. He had been in space for 3 months now, patrolling the outer colonies. Everything seemed normal. That changed when the emergency alarm started screaming. "Captain, we're getting reports of attacks," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. Her face was pale. "Multiple attacks on human targets." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What kind of attacks?" Amy's fingers flew over her controls. "Sir, the passenger liner New Hope has been destroyed. 3,000 people were on board. All dead." The bridge went silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. 3,000 civilians. Gone. "There's more, sir," Amy continued. "The New Geneva research station has been bombed. 800 scientists killed. And, sir," she paused, her voice shaking, "they've taken hostages on the orbital habitat New Tomorrow. 2,000 children." Jake gripped the edge of his command chair. "Who did this?" "The Zephyrian Liberation Front. They're demanding we leave their territory and pay them money. Lots of money." Dr. Kevin Brooks, the ship's science officer, stepped forward. Kevin was a gentleman who studied alien cultures. He always believed in talking things through. "Captain, we need to contact Earth Command. This calls for careful diplomacy." Jake nodded, but something cold was growing in his chest. These weren't soldiers who had died. They were families, scientists, children. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Parker was in her office when the news came in. She had been in the military for 30 years. She had seen wars and peace talks. She had negotiated with dozens of alien species. But this was different. Her aide rushed in. "Admiral, the Confederation Council is calling for immediate talks with the terrorists. They want us to negotiate." Lisa stood up slowly. She was a small woman, but everyone who knew her understood she was tough as steel. "Get me President Coleman on the line, now." Within an hour, President Ryan Coleman was addressing the Galactic Confederation Council. The council chamber was huge, filled with representatives from 200 different alien species. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living crystal. Some were so different that humans needed special equipment just to communicate with them. The Altarian ambassador, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, spoke first. "Humanity must find middle ground with the Liberation Front. Violence only creates more violence." Other aliens nodded. This was how the galaxy worked. When terrorists attacked, you talked to them. You gave them some of what they wanted. You found a compromise. Everyone knew this was the civilized way. President Coleman stood up. The chamber fell quiet. He was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. "Earth does not negotiate with terrorists. Period." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Several aliens made sounds that their translators couldn't handle properly. The Altarian ambassador waved his 4 arms. "President Coleman, surely you don't mean that. These beings have legitimate concerns. We must listen to their grievances." Coleman's face didn't change. "They murdered 3,000 innocent people. They bombed a research station. They're holding children hostage. There are no grievances that justify this. There will be no negotiations. There will be no compromise. There will be no middle ground." An alien that looked like a walking tree spoke up. "But this is how civilized beings handle conflict, through dialogue, through understanding." "Understanding?" Coleman's voice got harder. "I understand perfectly. They chose to target civilians. They chose to murder children. Those who make such choices have forfeited all rights to our mercy or our words." Back on the Liberty's Edge, Captain Morrison was getting new orders. Admiral Parker's face appeared on his screen, and Jake could see the steel in her eyes. "Jake, I'm sending you new operational parameters. We're calling it the Morrison Doctrine." "What's the mission, Admiral?" "Any entity that engages in terrorist acts against human civilians forfeits all rights to negotiation, mercy, or quarter. We will respond with overwhelming force until the threat is completely eliminated." Jake felt something click into place. Understood, Admiral. What are my orders? Mobilize every ship in your sector. We're assembling the largest human fleet in history. Task Force Retribution. I'm taking personal command. Dr. Brooks stepped forward. Admiral, surely we should try. Talking first. Maybe we can save those children without violence. Admiral Parker's expression didn't soften. Doctor, we tried talking for 50 years. We joined their confederation. We followed their rules. We negotiated and compromised and found middle ground. And what did it get us? Dead civilians and hostages. But, Admiral, no buts, Doctor. The galaxy thinks we're soft because we've been diplomatic. They think we'll bend rather than break. Today, we show them they're wrong. Within 72 hours, Earth had assembled a fleet that shocked the galaxy. 47 heavy cruisers, 23 assault carriers loaded with Marines, 156 destroyers and frigates, 12 siege platforms designed to break space stations. The alien governments couldn't believe it. The hegemony sent urgent messages. The Altarian Empire threatened economic sanctions. Dozens of species called for Earth to reconsider. Captain Morrison, now leading the advance fleet, recorded a message for the terrorists. His ship was at the edge of the Zephyr system, and behind him stretched the largest war fleet humanity had ever built. This is Captain Morrison of Earth Defense Command. You have 24 hours to release all hostages and surrender unconditionally. After that, we will consider every military installation, every supply depot, every safe house, and every supporter as legitimate targets. We will not stop until your organization ceases to exist. The response came 12 hours later. The terrorists executed 50 hostages and broadcast their deaths across the galaxy. They sent a message with the bodies. Let the galaxy see what human aggression causes. Stop these warmongers before they destroy us all. But something had changed in humanity. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of her flagship as the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around her, officers worked with quiet efficiency. There was no anger in their voices, no hatred, just cold, professional determination. Admiral, said Commander Foster, the Confederation Council is demanding we halt our advance. They say we're becoming the very thing we claim to fight. Parker looked out at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, children were dying because adults had chosen to make them weapons. Somewhere out there, evil people thought they could murder innocents and be rewarded with negotiations. Commander, send this message to the Confederation Council and to every news service in the galaxy. Today, humanity teaches the galaxy a lesson it has forgotten. Evil unchecked grows stronger. Terror unpunished spreads like cancer. We do not negotiate with monsters because doing so makes us complicit in their monstrosity. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it a new philosophy that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Ahead of them, terrorists who had never faced an enemy that meant what it said were about to learn a hard lesson. The age of compromise was over. The age of consequences had begun. The human fleet moved through space like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Morrison watched from his bridge as ship after ship jumped out of hyperspace around him. Each one took position with military precision that made the alien observers nervous. Dr. Brooks stood beside Morrison, looking uncomfortable. Captain, I've been thinking. Maybe there's still time to find a peaceful solution. Those children are still alive. Morrison turned to face the older scientist. Doctor, how many terrorist attacks has the galaxy seen in the past year? Brooks consulted his tablet. 47 major incidents across 12 sectors. And how many were stopped through negotiation? Well, most ended with some form of agreement. That's not what I asked. How many terrorist organizations were completely eliminated through talking? Brooks was quiet for a long moment. None, sir. That's right. None. They make demands, kill people, get some of what they want, then do it again somewhere else. It's a business model, Doctor, and we're about to put them out of business. On the planet Altair Prime, Ambassador Veltar was in an emergency meeting with his council. The tall blue alien paced back and forth, his forearms gesturing wildly. The humans have lost their minds, he said. They're sending a war fleet to deal with a simple terrorist problem. This goes against everything civilized species believe in. His aide, a younger Altarian, looked up from her reports. Sir, our intelligence shows the human fleet is massive. Bigger than anything they've ever assembled. That's exactly the problem. They're using a hammer to swat a fly. We must intervene before they destroy the delicate balance we've maintained for centuries. Within hours, the Altarian Empire dispatched their own fleet, not to fight the humans, but to position themselves between Earth's forces and the terrorist strongholds. They would force the humans to negotiate by making military action impossible. Admiral Parker received the news while reviewing tactical plans. Commander Foster brought her the intelligence report. Admiral, the Altarians are sending ships to block our advance. They say they're there to mediate. Parker didn't look up from her battle plans. Commander, send a message to all Altarian vessels. Any ship that interferes with our operations will be treated as providing material support to terrorists. Foster's eyes widened. Ma'am, that's essentially a declaration of war with the Altarian Empire. No, Commander. That's a declaration that we mean what we say. The time for empty words is over. Back in the Zephyr system, the terrorists were watching human fleet movements with growing confusion. Their leader, a reptilian creature named Skatar, called an emergency meeting. They're not sending negotiators, he hissed to his lieutenants. They're sending warships. Lots of warships. One of his officers, a nervous mammalian alien, spoke. Maybe we should release some hostages, show good faith. Skatar's eyes glowed with anger. Good faith? We hold all the cards. We have their children. No civilized species attacks when children are at risk. The humans will negotiate. They have to. But Commander Foster's intelligence network was already working. In the 3 days since the attacks, her agents had identified terrorist cells in 17 different star systems. They had found supply routes, safe houses, and financial networks that stretched across the galaxy. Captain Morrison, Foster said over a secure channel, this is bigger than we thought. The Liberation Front isn't just one group. They're part of a network that's been operating for decades. Morrison studied the intelligence reports on his screen. How big? Sir, we're looking at over 200 connected cells across known space. They share resources, training, weapons. What we thought was a single terrorist organization is actually a galaxy-wide operation. Morrison felt a chill. Commander, are you telling me this attack was just one small part of something much larger? Yes, sir. And, sir? Based on our analysis, they've been planning something much worse. The attack on us was meant to be a test. They wanted to see how the galaxy would respond. On Earth, President Coleman was meeting with his Security Council. The room was full of Earth's best military minds and intelligence officers. The news from Foster's investigation had reached them an hour ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Coleman said, we're not dealing with a local problem anymore. We're looking at a cancer that has spread throughout the galaxy. General Patricia Hayes, the head of Earth Special Forces, leaned forward. Mr. President, if this intelligence is accurate, every negotiation the galaxy has had with terrorists for the past 50 years has been feeding this network. Every compromise, every deal, every ransom paid has made them stronger. Dr. Brooks, attending the meeting via video link from Morrison's ship, raised his hand. Mr. President, I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of the terrorist networks. The galaxy's policy of negotiation has created something terrible. These beings don't see terrorism as a desperate last resort. They see it as a legitimate political tool. Coleman was quiet for a moment. Explain that, Doctor. Sir, when you reward violence with negotiation, you teach violent people that their methods work. The galaxy has accidentally created a culture where terrorism pays. Literally. In the Confederation Council chambers, panic was setting in. The human fleet was almost at the Zephyr system, and the Altarian mediation fleet was moving to intercept them. Other species were choosing sides, and the careful balance of galactic politics was collapsing. The hegemony representative, a crystalline being that communicated through light patterns, flickered urgently. The humans must be stopped. If they succeed through violence, it will encourage other species to abandon diplomacy. But the representative from the Corvan Republic, A bear-like creature named Throck stood up slowly. With respect, the humans may have a point. My world has suffered 6 terrorist attacks in the past 2 years. Each time we negotiated. Each time we gave the terrorists something. And each time, the attacks got worse. The chamber fell silent. Throck continued, his voice heavy with pain. My daughter was on one of the ships they bombed. She was 7 years old. The terrorists said they were fighting for freedom. What freedom requires the murder of children? 3 hours later, the first confrontation happened. An Altarian cruiser positioned itself directly in the path of Morrison's advance fleet. The alien captain sent a message to the human ships. This is Captain Velnash of the Altarian vessel Peaceful Dawn. We are here to mediate this conflict. You will halt your advance and allow us to arrange negotiations. Morrison's response was broadcast on all frequencies, so every ship in the DO system could hear it. Captain Velnash, you have 10 minutes to move your ship. If you do not, we will move it for you. Captain Morrison, you cannot be serious. We are a neutral vessel on a peaceful mission. Captain, you are interfering with a military operation against terrorists. Move your ship. 8 minutes later, the Altarian cruiser was still blocking the human advance. Morrison gave a simple order to his weapons officer. Disable their engines. Minimum force. The Liberty's Edge fired a single precise shot that crippled the Altarian ship's propulsion system. The alien vessel drifted helplessly as the human fleet passed by. Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. The humans had fired on an Altarian ship. The careful rules of galactic diplomacy had been shattered. But Morrison wasn't thinking about diplomacy as his fleet reached the edge of the Zephyr system. He was thinking about 2,000 human children who were running out of time. He was thinking about the network of evil that had been growing while the galaxy looked the other way. All ships, Morrison broadcast to his fleet. We are about to show the galaxy what happens when you choose to be monsters. We are about to demonstrate that some lines cannot be crossed, some evils cannot be tolerated, and some enemies cannot be reasoned with. Admiral Parker's voice came over the comm from the main battle fleet, now just hours behind Morrison's advance. First, Captain, the Confederation Council is demanding we withdraw. They're threatening sanctions, trade embargoes, expulsion from the Confederation. Morrison looked out at the stars ahead, where somewhere in the darkness children were waiting for rescue. Admiral, tell the Confederation Council that we'll discuss their concerns after we've finished our work here. Right now, we have terrorists to eliminate and hostages to save. The die was cast. Humanity had chosen its path. The galaxy would never be the same. Captain Morrison's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system, like a storm made of metal and fire. The terrorists had been expecting negotiators and mediators. Instead, they got the largest human war fleet in history. The orbital habitat New Tomorrow hung in space like a giant wheel, slowly spinning around the planet below. Inside were 2,000 human children, held hostage by creatures who thought murder was a bargaining chip. Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display. Commander Foster, what's our intelligence on the habitat's defenses? Foster studied her screens. Sir, they've got weapon platforms around the station and armed ships patrolling nearby. But Captain, they're not military vessels. These are converted, cargo ships and civilian craft with weapons bolted on. They're not expecting a real fight, Morrison said quietly. They're expecting a negotiation. Dr. Brooks looked worried. Captain, there are children on that station. If we attack directly, Doctor, we're not going to attack the station, we're going to take it back. Morrison turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all terrorist vessels in this system. This is their final warning. The message went out on all frequencies. Morrison's voice was calm and clear. This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have taken human civilians hostage. You have murdered innocents. Your time for surrender has passed. Any vessel that does not immediately power down weapons and prepare to be boarded will be destroyed. You have 5 minutes. The response came quickly. Escatar's reptilian face appeared on the main screen, his eyes glowing with anger. Human fool, we hold your children. Attack us and they die. The galaxy will see you as monsters who sacrifice innocence for pride. Morrison didn't blink. You're right about one thing. The galaxy will see who we really are today. The 5 minutes passed in silence. Not a single terrorist ship powered down. Morrison gave the order his crew had been waiting for. All ships, commence Operation Homecoming. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on all hostile vessels. Priority 1 is the safety of the hostages. Priority 2 is the complete elimination of terrorist forces. What happened next shocked every observer in the system. The human fleet didn't charge in with guns blazing. Instead, they moved with surgical precision that the galaxy had never seen before. Morrison's destroyers hit the outer patrol ships first. The terrorist vessels, expecting a slow approach and demands for negotiation, were caught completely off guard. Within 10 minutes, every ship guarding the approaches to the habitat was either destroyed or drifting powerless in space. At the same time, Admiral Parker's main fleet arrived in the system, but instead of joining the assault on the habitat, they spread out across the entire star system. Commander Foster's intelligence had identified 17 different terrorist bases on moons and asteroids throughout Zephyr space. The terrorists watched in growing horror as human ships appeared at every one of their secret locations. Bases that had been hidden for years were suddenly under attack by forces that knew exactly where to find them. On the habitat New Tomorrow, Siktar was screaming orders at his subordinates. "They can't do this. Where are the mediators? Where are the peace talks?" One of his officers, a nervous creature with too many eyes, looked up from his instruments. "Sir, human boarding pods are approaching the station. They're not trying to negotiate. They're trying to take us." Impossible. They wouldn't risk the children. But the humans weren't risking the children, they were saving them. Morrison had planned this operation with the best military minds Earth had ever produced. Every boarding pod was filled with specially trained Marines who had studied the habitat's layout for days. They knew where the children were being held. They knew where the terrorists would be positioned. They knew exactly how to get in and get out with minimum risk to the hostages. The first boarding pod attached to the habitat's outer hull. Marine Sergeant Billy Cox and his team cut through the airlock with tools that made no sound. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, using non-lethal weapons to disable terrorist guards before the aliens even knew humans were aboard. Within an hour, Cox's team had secured the first section of hostages. 300 children, scared, but alive, were evacuated to human medical ships. Escatar finally understood what was happening. The humans weren't negotiating because they didn't need to negotiate. They were simply taking back what was theirs. "Kill the hostages!" he screamed at his remaining forces. "If we can't use them, then no one can have them." But the humans had expected this. Dr. Brooks, despite his earlier concerns about the military approach, had spent days studying terrorist psychology. He knew they would try to kill the hostages rather than lose their leverage. That's why every human boarding team was equipped with stun weapons that could disable entire rooms full of beings. In seconds, when the terrorists tried to carry out Skatar's final order, they found themselves unconscious before they could pull their triggers. By the end of the second hour, 1,800 of the 2,000 hostages had been rescued. The remaining children were in the habitat's core, where Escatar had barricaded himself with his last loyal followers. Morrison spoke directly to the terrorist leader over the comm system. "Skatar, you have 200 human children with you. Release them and we'll let you live to face trial." The reptilian's response was full of rage and disbelief. "You've destroyed everything. Our bases, our ships, our people. This isn't how civilized beings fight." "You're right," Morrison said calmly. "Civilized beings don't take children hostage. Civilized beings don't murder innocents. You stopped being civilized the moment you chose terrorism. Now you get to face the consequences." The final assault on the habitat's core was led by Marine Captain Linda Rice. She and her team had trained for situations exactly like this one. They used gas that put the terrorists to sleep while leaving the children unharmed. Within 20 minutes, the last hostages were free. Escatar woke up in a human detention cell, his claws and fangs removed for safety. The first thing he saw was Morrison's face on a screen. "Is this how you treat prisoners?" the reptilian hissed. "You're not a prisoner of war," Morrison replied. "You're a terrorist. You murdered civilians and took children hostage. You'll be tried for your crimes and, if found guilty, you'll face the consequences." Across the Zephyr system, similar scenes were playing out. The galaxy watched in amazement as human forces systematically dismantled the entire terrorist network in less than 6 hours. Bases that had operated in secret for decades were captured or destroyed. Leaders who had never been found were in custody or dead. The efficiency was terrifying to some and inspiring to others. On the planet Corva, President Throck watched the news broadcasts with his military advisors. The bear-like being had lost his daughter to terrorists 2 years ago. Now he was seeing something he had never believed possible. "They did it," he said quietly. "They actually did it. The terrorists are gone and the children are safe." His defense minister looked confused. "Sir, how is this possible? Our military experts said it couldn't be done without massive civilian casualties." Throck was quiet for a long moment. "Because we've been fighting terrorism the wrong way for centuries. We've been treating it like a political problem that needs negotiation. The humans are treating it like a cancer that needs to be cut out." Within hours of the operation's success, something unprecedented happened. 3 different species contacted Earth directly, bypassing the Confederation Council completely. They wanted to know if humanity would help them deal with their own terrorist problems. Morrison stood on his bridge, looking out at the rescued children being transferred to medical ships. Dr. Brooks approached him, holding a data pad. "Captain, I've been analyzing the intelligence we gathered from the terrorist bases. The network was even bigger than we thought. They had operations planned against 17 different species." Morrison nodded. "And now?" "Now their entire command structure is gone. Their supply lines are cut. Their safe houses are destroyed. Captain, I don't think they can recover from this." For the first time in days, Morrison smiled. "Doctor, that's the point. When you completely eliminate a threat, it can't come back to hurt more innocents." The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Evil that went unopposed grew stronger, but evil that faced absolute opposition could be destroyed completely. The age of endless negotiation with terrorists was ending. The age of decisive action had begun. 3 weeks after the Zephyr operation, the galaxy was a different place. The news of humanity's total victory had spread to every corner of known space. For the first time in centuries, a terrorist organization had been completely eliminated, instead of negotiated with. President Throck of the Corvan Republic was the first alien leader to arrive on Earth. The massive bear-like creature sat across from President Coleman in the White House, his dark eyes serious. "President Coleman, I need to ask you something directly," Throck said. "Will you help us deal with our terrorist problem?" Coleman leaned forward. "Tell me about it." "The Blood Claw Syndicate has been attacking our colonies for 5 years. We've tried everything the Confederation recommended. Peace talks, mediation, compromise agreements. Each time we give them something, they demand more. Last month, they bombed a school. 200 children died." Coleman's expression hardened. "What do you want from us?" "Your methods, your training, your help in ending this once and for all." Within a week, the Corvan Republic formally announced they were adopting what they called the Earth Doctrine. No negotiations with terrorists, no compromise with evil. Complete elimination of the threat. The Confederation Council was furious. Ambassador Veltar of the Altarian Empire stood before the emergency session, his forearms waving in distress. "This madness must stop. The humans are spreading their violent philosophy across the galaxy. Soon every species will abandon diplomacy for war." But the hegemony representative, a being made of living crystal, flickered with uncertain light patterns. "Ambassador Veltar, perhaps we should examine the results. The Zephyrian Liberation Front is gone, completely. Their attacks have stopped. Their network is destroyed. Can we say the same about any terrorist group we've negotiated with?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. Meanwhile, Commander Foster was establishing something new on Earth. The Counter-Terror Intelligence Network brought together the best minds from every species willing to fight terrorism seriously. The first meeting included representatives from 12 different worlds. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," Foster addressed the mixed group. "We're here to share what works. The old way of handling terrorism clearly doesn't work. It's time to try something that does." Dr. Brooks, now Earth's leading expert on terrorist psychology, presented his research to the group. For 300 years, the galaxy has treated terrorism as a political problem. We've assumed that terrorists have legitimate grievances that can be addressed through negotiation, but here's what we've learned. Modern terrorism isn't about political goals. It's about power and profit. A delegate from the Rigel system, a tall, thin creature with silver skin, raised a delicate hand. Dr. Brooks, are you saying that negotiation never works? I'm saying that negotiation with terrorists teaches them that violence pays. Every time we reward murder with talks, we encourage more murder. The data is clear. In sectors where Earth now maintains a presence, terrorist attacks have dropped by 70%. In sectors still using traditional Confederation methods, attacks have increased. The evidence was hard to argue with. 6 months after Zephyr, something happened that shocked everyone. The Syndicate of Free Traders, one of the largest terrorist networks in the galaxy, made a critical mistake. They attacked civilian targets on 3 different worlds in the same week, hoping to overwhelm the new alliance between Earth and the growing number of species adopting human methods. The response was swift and coordinated. Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, coordinated the multi-species operation from his new flagship, the Uncompromising. All Allied fleets. This is Admiral Morrison. Intelligence indicates Syndicate bases in 47 locations across 6 star systems. Each Allied fleet will take responsibility for targets in their sectors. Rules of engagement are the same for everyone. Complete elimination of terrorist forces, protection of civilians, no negotiations. The Corvin fleet, trained by human advisors, struck first. President Throck personally led the assault on the base where his daughter had been murdered. The bear-like warriors fought with a fury that impressed even the human observers. The Rigel, defense force using tactics learned from Earth, eliminated 3 Syndicate cells in a single day. Their silver ships moved with precision that would have been impossible under the old system of lengthy negotiations and ceasefires. Even more surprising was the participation of the hegemony. The crystal beings had secretly asked for human help after their homeworld suffered a devastating attack. Their energy weapons, guided by human intelligence, turned Syndicate strongholds into glowing slag. Within 72 hours, the Syndicate of Free Traders ceased to exist. Every leader was captured or dead. Every base was destroyed. Every supply line was cut. The galaxy watched in amazement as the largest terrorist organization in known space simply vanished. Ambassador Veltar called another emergency session of the Confederation Council. This time his voice was different, less certain, more worried. The Earth Alliance grows stronger every day, he told the assembled representatives. 17 species have now adopted their methods. Their fleets patrol sectors that were once under our protection. They ignore our mediation efforts and handle problems through force. The representative from the Outer Rim colonies, a squid-like creature, spoke up. Ambassador, terrorist attacks in Alliance-protected space have virtually stopped. Meanwhile, attacks in Confederation space continue to increase. Perhaps we should consider that their methods work. But at what cost? Veltar demanded. They've abandoned centuries of civilized behavior. They've returned to the barbarism of their ancestors. An unexpected voice joined the debate. It was Ambassador Chen Wei of the Altarian Empire, Veltar's own subordinate. With respect, sir, I disagree. I've been studying human military actions for the past 6 months. They use minimum necessary force. They protect civilians. They offer surrender terms to military targets. The only beings they show no mercy to are those who deliberately target innocents. Veltar stared at his aide in shock. Chen Wei, you cannot be serious. Sir, my sister was killed in a terrorist attack 3 years ago. The perpetrators were caught, tried, sentenced to community service, and released after agreeing to attend mediation sessions. Last month they killed 40 more people in another bombing. Tell me, sir, how is that justice? How is that civilized? The Confederation was splitting apart. Species that had suffered under terrorism for decades were quietly approaching Earth. Those that benefited from the old system of endless negotiations and bribes were trying to maintain the status quo. Dr. Brooks was working late in his lab when the call came in. It was from Admiral Parker, now commanding all Earth Defense Forces. "Doctor, we've got a problem. Our deep space monitors have detected something at the edge of the galaxy. Something big." Brooks pulled up the sensor data on his screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Admiral, those ships, they're not from any known species." "That's right, Doctor. We're looking at first contact with an unknown civilization, and based on the debris field they're leaving behind, they're not coming in peace." Parker's image appeared on Brooks's screen. The Admiral looked tired but determined. "Doctor, preliminary analysis suggests these beings have destroyed at least 3 star systems on their way here. Complete sterilization. No survivors. Genocide," Brooks whispered. "That's right. And the Confederation Council's first response? They want to send a diplomatic mission to establish peaceful contact and understand the newcomers' grievances." Brooks almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Admiral, they want to negotiate with genocidal conquerors?" "Doctor, old habits die hard. But this time they're not just risking a few hostages or a bombed station. They're risking the entire galaxy." Within hours, President Coleman was addressing both the Earth Alliance and the Confederation Council. His message was simple and direct. "We have detected a new threat approaching our galaxy. Based on their actions, these beings have committed genocide against multiple civilizations. The Confederation wishes to negotiate with them. The Earth Alliance will prepare to stop them." The lines were drawn. Half the galaxy still believed that any problem could be solved through talking. The other half had learned that some evils could only be stopped through strength. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Uncompromising, watching the largest fleet in galactic history assemble. Ships from dozens of species, all united under a single principle: some lines cannot be crossed. "Admiral," Commander Foster reported, "the Alliance fleet is ready. 43 species, over 2,000 ships." Morrison nodded. "And the Confederation?" "They're still debating whether to send a peace mission or a defense fleet. The vote is too close to call." Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere, beyond them, an enemy approached that had never heard the word compromise. "Commander, send a message to all Alliance ships. We may be facing the ultimate test of our principles. But we've learned something the galaxy forgot long ago. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is stop evil before it spreads." The galaxy was about to learn whether strength or negotiation would prevail against an enemy that understood only conquest. 5 years had passed since the Zephyr incident that changed everything. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been when Captain Morrison first refused to negotiate with terrorists. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Uncompromising, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Around him stretched ships from 43 different species, all united under what the galaxy now called the Earth Alliance. The enemy they faced was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Devourers, as they called themselves, had swept through the outer rim of the galaxy like a plague. They destroyed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space where civilizations had once thrived. "Admiral," Commander Foster reported from her station, "long-range sensors confirm 12 Devourer fleets approaching our defensive line. Each fleet contains approximately 500 ships." Morrison nodded calmly. "Any word from the Confederation Council?" Foster checked her communications. "Sir, they're still debating. Half want to send a diplomatic mission to negotiate with the Devourers. The other half want to join our defensive fleet." Dr. Brooks, now an old man with gray hair, walked onto the bridge. He had become the Alliance's chief expert on hostile alien psychology. "Admiral, I've finished analyzing the Devourer communications we intercepted." "What did you find, Doctor?" Brooks looked tired but determined. "Sir, these beings don't have a concept of negotiation as we understand it. Their language doesn't even have words for compromise or peace treaty. They see other species as either food or obstacles to be removed." Morrison wasn't surprised. "So the Confederation's plan to negotiate would be like trying to negotiate with a forest fire, Admiral. They simply don't think the way we do. They see our galaxy as territory to be conquered and our people as resources to be consumed." On the planet Corva, President Throck was addressing his people. The bear-like leader had become one of Earth's strongest allies after seeing what human methods could accomplish. "My friends," Throck said to the massive crowd, "5 years ago, terrorists murdered my daughter and hundreds of other children. The old galaxy told us to negotiate, to understand their grievances, to find compromise. But one species showed us a different way. Today, our children sleep safely because we learned that some evils cannot be reasoned with. They can only be stopped." Though, crowd roared its approval. Corvan ships were already moving to join the Alliance fleet, their crews trained by human advisors and armed with weapons designed for decisive victory. Meanwhile, on Altair Prime, Ambassador Veltar was having the argument of his life with his own government. The blue alien paced before the Altarian Council, his 4 arms gesturing desperately. "We must join the Alliance fleet," he insisted. "The Devourers have destroyed 17 civilizations. They don't respond to communication attempts. They simply attack and consume everything in their path." The council leader, an elderly Altarian, with faded blue skin, shook his head. "Ambassador, we have maintained peace for 3 centuries through negotiation. We will not abandon our principles now." "Principles?" Veltar's voice rose. "Our principles are useless against an enemy that sees us as food. The humans were right about terrorism, and they're right about this threat too." But the Council had made its decision. The Altarian Empire would send a diplomatic mission to make contact with the Devourers and attempt to establish peaceful relations. The diplomatic mission lasted exactly 47 minutes. The Devourers responded to the peace envoy by destroying every ship and broadcasting the deaths across all communication channels. Their message was simple: "You are food, prepare to be consumed." Admiral Morrison received the news while reviewing battle plans. Commander Foster brought him the communication from the destroyed diplomatic mission. "Admiral, the Altarian peace mission has been eliminated. The Devourers broadcast the attack on all frequencies." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Any survivors?" "No, sir. Complete destruction." "What's the Confederation Council's response?" Foster checked her reports. "Sir, 17 more species have requested to join the Alliance fleet in the past hour. The Confederation is collapsing as a military force." Morrison understood. The galaxy was learning once again that some enemies could not be reasoned with. The first battle came 3 days later. The Devourer advance fleet met the Alliance defensive line near the Rigel system. Admiral Morrison commanded from the center of the formation, with ships from dozens of species spread out in a defensive wall that stretched across the entire system. "All ships," Morrison broadcast to the fleet, "remember your training. These beings chose to be monsters. They chose to destroy innocent civilizations. Today, we stop them." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Devourers fought with savage fury, using weapons that could crack planets and ships the size of moons. But the Alliance fought with something the Devourers had never encountered: coordinated tactics developed through years of fighting terrorism together. The Corvan ships, led by President Throck himself, punched through the enemy left flank. The Rigel Defense Force used their advanced energy weapons to disable Devourer command ships. The hegemony crystal beings created energy barriers that protected smaller Alliance vessels from enemy fire. And at the center of it all, human ships fought, with the precision and determination that had made them legends. Morrison's tactical coordination held the fleet together, while individual captains made decisions that saved entire star systems. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Devourer advance fleet was destroyed. Not defeated, not driven, completely eliminated. Dr. Brooks studied the aftermath from his research ship. "Admiral, we captured some of their technology. These beings have destroyed hundreds of civilizations across multiple galaxies. They're not explorers or conquerors in any sense we understand. They're a plague that consumes everything it touches." Morrison nodded grimly. "How many more fleets are coming?" "At least 20, sir." "But Admiral, something interesting happened during the battle. We intercepted communications between the remaining Devourer fleets. They're confused. They've never encountered organized resistance before. Every other galaxy they've entered simply collapsed before them. Because every other galaxy tried to negotiate instead of fight, Morrison realized. The news of the Alliance victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every remaining Confederation species requested to join the Alliance. Even the Altarian Empire, after losing their diplomatic mission, formally adopted the Earth Doctrine. Ambassador Veltar himself arrived on Morrison's flagship to sign the agreement. The blue alien looked older and sadder than before. "Admiral Morrison," Veltar said, "I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you thanks. 5 years ago you showed us that some evils cannot be negotiated with. Today that lesson saved our civilization." Morrison shook the alien's hand with genuine respect. "Ambassador, wisdom is learning from experience. The galaxy is wiser now than it was 5 years ago." 1 year later, the last Devourer fleet was destroyed in the Battle of the Outer Rim. The threat that had consumed entire galaxies was finally stopped at the edge of known space. Admiral Morrison, now Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Force, stood before a gathering of representatives from every species in the galaxy. The old Confederation Council chambers had been transformed into something new, the Alliance Assembly. 5 years ago, Morrison said, humanity made a simple statement: we don't talk to terrorists. Today that principle has evolved into something larger. We don't negotiate with evil. We don't compromise with monsters. We don't appease those who would destroy innocent life. The assembly hall was silent as Morrison continued. We've learned that kindness to the wicked is cruelty to the innocent. We've learned that strength shared makes everyone stronger. We've learned that some lines cannot be crossed. Dr. Brooks, now very old but still sharp, smiled from his seat in the audience. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition, from the place where terrorism was treated as a political problem to be managed rather than eliminated. President Coleman, in his final address before retirement, perhaps said it best. We didn't become monsters when we refused to negotiate with evil. We became protectors. We became guardians. We became the kind of people our children could be proud of. The galaxy was safe. Evil had been stopped. And everyone understood that it had happened because one species chose to mean what they said, when they said some things could not be tolerated. The age of endless compromise was over. The age of principled strength had begun.